You're going live now.
You just see red. Okay.
Thank you, Steve.
You're
Need
welcome.
a test on the mic.
All right, microphones are on. Okay. I guess I will call it to order and do some introductions. Board of Determination members, I'll let you go ahead and say your name and where you're from.
I'm Paulie, I live in Glen Arbor.
Rich Haley, Sutton's Bay.
Gary Fredrickson, I'm in Northport.
And I'm gonna text, there is an alternate coming in case we need him. So, I'm the Drain Commissioner, Steve Christensen, and staff, same. Newly elected Drain Commissioner, Tim Ona. So he'll be the face of the Drain Commission here very shortly. So, our engineer from GEI, Brian Sensi, and Leah
Marino.
So we're well represented by GEI. It's a really great company, and I feel very lucky to have them on board, leading the charge and being able to put all the pieces together. So I guess traditionally it's not on the agenda, but I think I'd like to say the pledge. We can stand and say pledge of allegiance. Oh yeah, we did put that on the agenda, yeah.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, first off, I see the oath is there. I'm just going to do a quick text and see. Excuse me, just for a second.
You checking in with Rob?
Yeah. Yeah, I could. All right. So for the oath, I get to have you guys stand up. Please stand and raise your right hand. As members of the Board of Determination for the Little Glen Lake Drain, do you solemnly swear that you own land in Leelanau County?
Yes.
Yeah.
I do.
I do.
Okay. As members of the Board of Determination for the Little Glen Lake Drain, do you solemnly swear that you do not own land in either Emerald Empire Township or any property within the proposed Little Glen Lake Drainage District?
I do.
As members of the Board of Determination for the Little Glen Lake Drain, do you solemnly swear that you will faithfully fulfill the duties being asked of you in determining whether the petition as called for in the petition for locating, establishing, and constructing of the Little Glen Lake Drain is or is not necessary for public health, convenience, or welfare based on the provisions of of Public Act 40 of 1956 as amended, which is commonly known as the Michigan Drain Code.
I do.
As members of the Board of Determination for the Little Glen Lake Drain, do you solemnly swear and understand that your determination as to the necessity of the petition will not be based on any potential costs for locating, establishing, or constructing the proposed Little Glen Lake Drain, and that you are not to determine the scope of the project, and also that your decision as to the necessity of the petition is to be based upon evidence and testimony presented at this meeting, and that all discussions and deliberations are to be done in public.
I do.
Lastly, as members of the Board of Determination for the Little Glen Lake Drain, do you solemnly swear and understand that your determination as a necessity of the petition for public health and convenience or public welfare is not to be based on whether there is a majority of evidence presented that shows such a necessity for the drain, but rather, but whether not to be based upon whether there is a majority of evidence presented that shows such necessity for the drain, but rather that there is some relevant, competent, and material evidence presented on the record that shows such necessity, i.e. a landowner or multiple landowners with testimony of flooding or property damage, or a landowner or multiple landowners with pictures of flooding. Being that if the petition is found necessary, it can remedy the issue. Thank you. So that finishes my part. And at this point, I'll turn the meeting over to the Board of Determination. And there are roles, duties, and functions. Brian, you get that?
Supposed to. I'm gonna.
We need the end.
Yeah.
I make a motion that Rich Bailey serve as chairperson of the Little Glen Lake Drain Board of Determination. I support that.
Other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I motion that Gary Frederickson serve as secretary of the Little Glen Lake Drain Board of Determination.
I support that.
Other discussion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
I move that I make a motion that public comment should be limited to 3 minutes per person, and individuals who have not provided testimony or public comment will be heard prior to individuals who have already provided public comment a first time. I also, as a part of that motion, would state that if at the discretion of this board, we want to hear more than 3 minutes worth of testimony from either a person present in the room or video present, that discretion shall be granted.
I support that.
And with that, I would turn the meeting over turn it back to Steve. Brian, the engineer.
So I'm gonna read the item 3 on the agenda. A is the
Role, duties, and
role and
function.
duties of the board. Is the agenda on there to accept it?
I'm sorry, what are you referencing? Accept the report.
To approve the agenda. I might not have.
I don't see it there.
No.
I hereby move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. So I'm gonna read the role and duties of what a board of determination is. And it will give some background on the application and petition. So on September 17th, more than 10 landowners who may be liable for assessment, at least 5 of which own land in the proposed drain, the Little Glen Lake Drainage District, signed an application to establish a new drain district for the Little Glen Lake Drain. And Steve's office, Drain Commissioner's office, published an order laying out and establishing a new county drain district immediately after. It was actually in the Enterprise, I think the last week of September. Then on September 30th, 2024, a petition signed by many of the same landowners who signed the application was filed with the Drain Commissioner's office and for the location, establishment, and construction of a new county drain called the Little Glen Lake Drain. The drain code requires that upon the receipt of a petition for constructing and establishing a new county drain, Drain Commissioner is required to appoint a board of determination composed of 3 disinterested property owners or residents of the county but do not live or have property interests in the proposed drainage district boundary or the township included in the drain district, in this case Empire Township. Drain Commissioner is not part of the board of determination and has no role in the board, has no influence or decisions to make for the board of determination. Steve has sworn them in. And once the meeting is done, the meeting will be run by the board members and you should address the board of determination members for the remainder of the meeting. The board of determination elects a chairperson and secretary, which they've already completed. Secretary records the minutes of the meeting. This is being streamed on YouTube on the county's live YouTube channel, which then we will be saved afterwards for reference as well later. The board of determination is here to listen to testimony related to the necessity of the petition, which is called out for the locating, establishing, or constructing of a new county drain. After public testimony, the board will then decide whether the location, establishment, construction of the new drain is necessary and conducive to the public health, convenience, or welfare for any lands within the drainage district boundary. The Drain Commissioner and myself will stay for the meeting, but we have no role in the decision as to whether a project is necessary or not. Or we do not support or oppose the project either way. That decision is solely within the discretion of the board and solely their decision only. The Drain Commissioner and myself will try to answer any questions the public or the board may have, and I will present information regarding the proposed new drain and drainage district, which are requirements of the drain code. Just as a side note, you may hear myself or others refer to the drain code. That basically describes the law which all drain commissioners in the state have to operate under. It was Public Act 40 of 1956. It was amended for what we act under most recently, and very little has changed on it since then. So that's why some of the language like locating, establishing, and constructing, which is from 1956, is still used today in the petition. So very little about the process for the drain code has changed, but you may hear us reference that. At this meeting, Only decision that will be rendered is whether the petition for the locating establishment and construction of the Little Glen Lake Drain is necessary and conducive to public health, convenience, or welfare. This decision by the board is applicable for any properties and municipalities within the drainage district. One thing to point out, and you'll notice in the oath that Steve gave them, and if you look at the drain code, this meeting is meant to basically hear from the residents and hear testimony regarding the necessity of petition and if there are drainage issues within this new drainage district that can be remedied by such a petition. Regarding the necessity of the drain, the word any is critical because it is important to understand that drain code is set up to protect the rights of the impacted or encumbered landowners within a drainage district. Board's determination on whether the petitions are determined necessary or not are not based upon a popular vote or a democratic vote. They're not going to take a show of hands and say who wants this, who doesn't. That doesn't decide anyway. That's not how really our drainage law works in Michigan. The Michigan Drain Code recognizes that by and large, for the most part, a far greater number of properties in a drain district have no drainage problems. The ones up on the top of the hill drain down to the ones in the bottom of the hill. And usually for most drains and drain districts, you only have a smaller amount of people that are impacted or flooded in regards to these drainage issues. The drain code, the law basically is kind of set up to say, hey, if you contribute water to that end issue that the drain commissioner has to now remedy, you pay a portion of that cost. And we'll get into the assessment portion and stuff in my presentation because it's a little bit different on this particular drain. So the idea is that even though you may have no issues, you don't want this drain to happen, you have no problems, you were noticed because you were either in the proposed district or immediately adjacent to the district. So one thing we did do is overnotice the district. We do that for the simple reason because unless you're notified of this meeting, we can't come at the end of it if it's found necessary and assess you. If you were notified of this meeting, and just like no taxation without representation, you can't be assessed. So that's why we overnoticed a little bit, partly too, because neither myself or the drain commissioner may fully understand what the end scope of the project may be. I have a pretty good idea of what I think it is now, but someone may come to this meeting or come to us after and say, hey, I'm having an issue down here. You didn't look at it or address it at the BOD. So the district and what the end drain or what the solution may be a little different than what I'm thinking now and how we base the district off of. So that's why we overnotice. So some of you may have gotten a notice, actually aren't in the district. But we do that on purpose because we can't come back and recreate this meeting and assess people at the end unless you were notified initially of this petition. The drain code, this is why I like to call this, the drain code is considered a minority protection law, meaning the rights of only a few number of landowners in a district are just as important and outweigh, in terms of the board's decision, the rights of maybe 95% of the people in the district that have no problem. So the drain code was really set up to protect. They realize, hey, for the most part in Michigan, when there's a drainage problem, it's not like more than 50% are having a problem. It's usually a small percentage, 1 to 5 or 10% in a district has an issue, and everyone else is high and dry and have no problems. But the way the drain code is, it gives those people with the problem more rights because they can actually petition to do these things than the 95% of the people that don't want it. So that's a good way to look at it as far as how the board is to make their decision in whether to determine necessity or not. I'm not going to go into the stuff about myself, just a basic. I have been a licensed engineer since 2006. In the drain code, when the drain commissioner receives the petition, he's to hire a competent engineer or surveyor. I like how they say that. You have to be a competent engineer, but you can just be a surveyor. That's my joke.
You're gonna take issues with that.
We've got both.
That's my surveying joke. Tim's a surveyor. So the code actually says competent engineer
I
or
have a
surveyor.
sense of humor.
So to basically determine what the district is, determine what the initial drain route is, which the drain commissioner is also not held to. It's just what we think at this point would be the extent of the drain or the project. And then I've done these boards of determination. I've done about 115 of these meetings and worked for 16 different counties in the last 24 years and doing about 250 drains, taking them from their infancy to the petition process all the way to construction. So I've done a lot of this and a lot of these meetings before, and done several of these with Leelanau County. We had a rash of new drains back in 2019 and 2020. So I think there were 4 new ones that we had 4 different hearings like this. So now that I've told you what this meeting is about, I'll tell you what it's not about. The board only determines whether the project is necessary or not. Essentially, are they given evidence or information that there's a flooding problem and that the drain is necessary to remedy such issue? Based on a practical reading in the code, at a board determination, the board would normally determine that a project is necessary if they were to hear testimony from a resident about drainage issues or flooding, and that establishing a new drain is necessary for the protection of public health, convenience, or welfare. The board does not determine the scope of the project, how to fix the issue, with the route of the drain, the location of the drain, anything to do with construction, or anything like that, how much the project might cost, who should be assessed, who pays what, how the apportionments are done. They don't determine any of that at this meeting. They're solely here to hear from, for the most part, you guys as the residents. The good thing is the drain code is filled with a lot of due process protections, and a lot of the items that I mentioned that aren't discussed here are discussed at a later time at later meetings. If the board approves the project, the drain commissioner will determine the project essentially goes into the drain commissioner's lap, and they then determine the size, scope of the project, and essentially prepare plans for construction to remedy whatever the issues are as part of the drain. The drain law in Michigan requires that a drain commissioner apportion the cost of a drain project to property owners and municipal entities within a drain district. Apportionments to properties are based upon the principle of benefits derived. Apportionments to municipalities, or as we call them, at-large entities, in this case, Empire Township, MDOT, and the county of Leelanau as well, are based upon benefits to public health. And specifically, MDOT is based upon benefits to their state roads. So they kind of have a little bit different way in which they're assessed. However, if there is no necessity, there is no project, and there can be no new petition for at least a minimum of 1 year. On the other hand, if the board determines the project necessary, we will prepare and enter, drain commissioner will prepare and file what's called the order of necessity of determination. Essentially, whatever their determination is, he will file that order. It goes in the paper, and then we also give copies to any of the municipalities impacted, the township, county, and MDOT. I will go through in my presentation the apportionments, the potential apportionments might look like. This is a rather unique petition and issue because the flooding and standing water problems are quite frankly directly related to M22 and the lackage of drainage to accommodate runoff from the roadway. Because of this, we have had significant conversations with MDOT over the last 3 or 4 years regarding this issue. Quite frankly, we tried to resolve this issue without doing a drain, and tried to kind of get MDOT to lump in their paving project and do some drainage related stuff, which the road commission has done some stuff out there. But essentially, they've kind of taken it as far as they can go and said, look, we're supportive of a drain petition, but it needs to be a county drain and everything resolved at that. In regards to MDOT and all the discussions we've had in regards to the apportionment. I have done a number of projects working with MDOT. MDOT has their own funds that they get to pay for drain assessments. Throughout the year, dependent on the situation, and this is the perfect example, the drainage division coordinator at MDOT, who is in Lansing, so it's not the same MDOT that's on 31 in Traverse City, that TSC MDOT. They work with drain commissioners to try to resolve drainage problems where they feel that they have impacted or made an issue worse. It's kind of, you know, they're not going to tell you that, but that's kind of my summarization of it. In our discussions with MDOT, we have basically got a handshake agreement, which everything I've ever done with MDOT in the drainage division is a handshake agreement, and they've never not honored what they told us, that they are going to pick up the majority of the cost of this job. I don't have an exact percentage. I would guess that it's between 85 and 95% of the job will be paid entirely by MDOT. Okay, which is a little bit different, and I don't think I've ever come to board and basically said that as part of it. They recognize that this issue has a lot to do with them. I think we can get the majority of the work completed in the road right away, so we limit easements or impacts to residents and property owners, and they have basically said they'll pick up the majority cost of the job. So when you have a cost of a project, the landowners pay a portion, and then the at-large, the municipal entities pay a portion, which is MDOT, the township, and the county. Steve did a great thing with the county a couple of years ago, because we understand that we've had a lot of these new drains in Leelanau County. There's an inherent cost in establishing a new drain rather than an existing drain and petitioning it. And so he's basically went to the board 2 years ago and said, on these new drains, you're going to pick up a higher portion of these costs that we would normally assess the township. The reason for this, the townships up here are not charter townships. So we can't just send them an assessment and they just simply say, okay, we're gonna take that money from the taxes that we levy and pay it. They have to get a vote of the people to increase any of their millage that they then tax you people, which is different than any other county I work in. I think there's only Elmwood's the only charter township. So because of that whole issue, we had to kind of have the county pick up what normally townships would pick up. So this is all hypothetical, but say the township pays 5% and the county pays 10%. And what the MDOT person told me was find some number, whether it's $500 total or $1,000 total, assess the residents a max of that amount, and then assess your at-large entities, and we will pick up the remaining amount on this project. So the assessments too are can be spread out over a period of time. So when we have a project, we finance it because drain districts are just like their own cities. They can sue, be sued, borrow money. They're their own public entity. So we will finance the project and spread it out over a number of years, dependent on the cost. And that's usually something that we present at the day of review, which is the assessment hearing at the very end. That's when you find out how much you're paying, how much everyone else is paying, and you can meet with the drain commissioner. In that case, will be Tim, and we go through the assessment methodology. So the last thing, and I'll read it, anyone agreed by the decision of the board, whether the petition for the drain is necessary and conducive to public health, convenience, or welfare, whether they determine it necessary or not, may appeal the decision within 10 days and file that appeal to circuit court. If you do that, contact us, because the court will probably not know what to even do. So
I'm just gonna put a little addendum in here. the Lake Bluff drain, which we completed, got the Innovation and Excellence Award at the Winter Conference. Not everybody gets those. So feel real proud of that. It's a very nice project, came off nicely. Looking forward to have Tim mother hen it and keep it going, but I'm real proud of that one and kudos to GEI.
Yeah, the first project we completed for Steve last year, the Drain Association, the County Drain Commissioners gives out the best project award, one or two of them a year, and so that one won last year. And it was the first one that year we had done. It's in Solon Township, just off of Boucher Road on the south end of Lake. Everyone wants to drive by it. It's very nice looking neighborhood, and to their horn, the property values went up between 30 and 35% in every property as soon as we completed the job. We paved the road, which was a dirt road, and it needed to, but it significantly improved the value of all the properties in there after we finished it, because that's how it was. So, with that, I'll turn it back to the board. I think we're down to the item 4. You want me to go through the presentation?
Please.
Okay, so let me make sure.
Question, are we going to have remote attendees or they're just watching it on YouTube?
They're just watching it.
Okay,
Yep.
so there's no, I earlier said we might hear somebody via video feed, but we will not.
We will not,
Right.
no.
Okay, thank you.
It worked. Great. Okay, so essentially the purpose, like I said, in the drain code, the drain commissioner has to hire an engineer essentially to say, okay, where are the impacted properties from this drain? What might the drain district look like? And what might the drain look like? The route of the drain, where it's located, is not, the drain commissioner isn't held to that. It's just based on our initial review of it, where I think the drain would be most feasible, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be there, or the outlet to the lake to Little Glen is going to be in the location that we included it on the petition, or where it outlets to now. We review the field. We actually did some surveying work on this, I think two winters ago, when we were trying to work with MDOT, when we knew they were planning their paving project, to see if they could maybe do some ditching or some light work to connect to, there's an existing crossing that outlets to the lake on the Myers property, which I'm forgetting their address. What's that? 7211. 7211. So there's an existing crossing that MDOT doesn't know who put it in. We don't know who put it in, to the lake. So the initial drain we essentially said would be on the south side of M22 along the properties and hook into that and outlet to the lake, but it may not end up being there. So the proposed district is very small. Personally, I hate working with small districts because it doesn't make the assessing fun, but in this case, it's a lot easier when MDOT's picking up the bulk of this. The proposed district is about 16 acres in size. It's about 16 properties. I say about because it does include a portion of the common area of Shady Shores, which is on this right side over here. And the way we do assessments for condominiums, because the county GIS stuff and the drains commissioner doesn't really match up on how they treat the properties is that everyone that's in that condominium association pays for that portion of the assessment that's assessed to like a common area. So that's how we treat the condominium site condos. So each one of these little houses or little properties inside that are separate properties. And then we have 3 at-large entities, again, Empire Township, MDOT, because the M22, and then we did include Leelanau County in the order. Normally, the county is only included if they have county roads in, but because of the whole public health issue associated with assessing townships, the county is included in that as well. So you can see on the map, the drain route, so that's 7211 is where this existing green line is. Like I said, there is a culvert there that goes underneath the road. We really tried to get MDOT to upsize it as part of their paving work so that they wouldn't cap the road and then we have to come back and cut open the road. We have met with MDOT TFC. A couple things, they said we can cut the road if we need to, so we don't have to do like a bore and jack or trenchless construction underneath the road, which would be difficult in this area because personally, I would like to keep all of our work in the right of way so we don't have to approach landowners to get easements to do work on their property. As I mentioned, the drain route can change and will change depending on the end scope of the project. In the end, the initial drain route is just under 1,100 feet. So just to show there's a 15-inch existing storm sewer. So here's that 7211. We did a profile 2 years ago. So this is so on the south side of M22, and the property owners would know this, but there's essentially not really any ditches or drainage off the road connecting properties from one to another. There's low areas in between some of the drives. The initial solution that we came up with would be to install a subsurface pipe that has perforated, so a bunch of holes. If anyone knows what a French drain is, similar to that, but we would do very shallow, not ditches, but areas off of the road between the drives with a perforated pipe underneath the ground. And then it would use infiltration into the swale areas and then down in the perforated pipe. And then there are a lot of subsurface issues, which I think some of the residents will tell you about, springs that come up in through here, which will assist with that. We can also provide sump leads off of that pipe that we put into the ground and stub that out to the right of way. Or if someone has their lead there, we can connect it in. So I know some people have sump pumps there along the road because of the drainage issues. We can provide leads for that too as well. But then the idea was then for the surface drainage was just to do small, I call them yard basins. So they're not the big 2-foot openings that you see and 4-foot wide to install. They're basically 18-inch openings on the surface, and they're 2-foot wide structures. Or you can do 2-foot opening on the surface, but basically put pop-ups in between the drives to drain those areas rather than having to ditch it and put in culverts underneath all the driveways. This will save us on having to redo everyone's driveway apron and approach. It'll save us having to get into the road, which is my big concern as far as the extent of our work. We want to try and stay out of the influence of the road in through here. But that is when we initially looked at trying to do something and trying to work with the road commission and that what we proposed to them. I still think that general type of solution is very applicable. It's less intrusive for the residents. I've never met anyone that likes 2 or 2.5 foot deep ditches in their front yards. So this would allow everyone to mow it, their yards, if they got riding mowers. It's very flat slopes. You know, so if someone's front yard might be 10 to 12 inches lower than the edge of the road, that might be the deepest it is. So we're not talking very deep through here. These are some photos from some of the residents that we had gotten prior. So there has been some work on the very far west end in front of, is that in front of the manor? Yep, in front of the manor, the Lake Manor, where the road commission went in and I think just dug down to try to get some water to infiltrate in, so kind of create a swale off the edge of the road in the grass to try to get water to infiltrate down in the ground, but basically there was ponding water into there. So, but like I said, the big issue is, you know, and these may all have been ditched at one point or had culverts, I don't know. The road has filled up over time. That was one of the things that MDOT did go back and look for us. They've essentially capped it several times in doing their work. So it's kind of created an impediment. It's blocking all the water on the south side of the road and creating a low spot and what would be on the north side of all those properties on the south side of the road. Just some more photos, standing water in through these areas. The idea would kind of be to keep the look of it, keep as many trees as we could, keep the ground not steep, very gradual slopes, not have to put culverts under drives, things like that. So the pipe that we were looking to do, that would be like 3.5 feet below the ground underneath all of this. Some more photos.
You're welcome to sit closer if you want.
I was looking for a date on those pictures.
On the far right there, that is actually that existing 15-inch that goes underneath that 7211, and then on the north, the picture on top here, you can actually see where it goes out into Lake Michigan. We really pushed Glen, sorry. We really pushed MDOT to replace that for us, and they ultimately had already did the job and couldn't add it. So that's the question. You know, I'll ask the board if they have any questions, and then if not, I'll turn it back to you guys. Do you guys have any specific questions about anything?
Did the highway department comment about one of the reasons they're participating is the road failing prematurely?
I think that I'm sure that's part of it. You know, there's one of these pictures, I think it's this picture here. One of these, you can see how cracked it right here. Like you can see the road surfacing through there.
That's kind of what prompted the question.
Yeah.
It's gonna be.
There's a lot, and I think that, you know, I thought they maybe did some crack sealing this, individual sealing this last year. No, they have capped everything last year, you know, so that's part of it. But yeah, there's no set in stone way in which they look at these things, and we basically, Steve and myself, approached them about it. We've worked on many projects with MDOT like this, and we basically said, you know, I don't really see where this is too much on the landowners. And they researched it. I think they looked a lot at what have they done to the road over the years? Have they, you know, milled and filled? Have they capped it? And what they told me back was the road has probably come up. And so that was a big reason for saying, hey, yeah. And, you know, this isn't a $5 million project. So that's part of the reason too, you know, that it was these landowners know it. The interesting thing is one of the residents that lives out here used to be for 20+ years the MDOT highway drainage coordinator that we work with. So, and I used to work with him. His name is Gary Krosky. He's not here. I know he's supportive of the project as part of it. I think he's down in Florida.
I've done Lansing, I think.
Is he? Yeah. So it's a small world, but he's actually the person that had the job to the guy that we deal with now for 20 years prior. So, and the guy that we deal with now is actually from Empire and went to Traverse City Central. So he's from up here too as well and knows this issue.
Front yard.
One comment I wanted to make real quickly is this whole concept that Brian explained also fits into a very rigorous filtration type system for water quality. We're right on Glen Lake. I've had discussions with Rob Carter, and I know we'll be talking with him more. We really are highly cognizant of what we're doing here with regard to water quality. So that's gonna be part of what we're doing also.
Thank you. Any questions, Gary? Are you all done?
Yes.
Right. With that, I would open the public comment session of the meeting. And I'm assuming you were indicating we have a hand already?
Yeah.
Sir,
Yes.
your name and address.
Can you come up to the table?
Yeah, I will. Since my name is Dave Geisler, I'm a resident in the district. And little did I know, 6 years ago, when I was meeting with Steve on another issue, I asked the question, hey, what can I do with all this water in my yard and crawl space? And the wheels have turned over the past 6 years to end up in a drain district proposal. And I provided most of the photos already shown that I have in my presentation as well. So it's a little redundant in that case, and they're all from the last 4 years.
Were they after a heavy rainfall?
Yeah, they're after rain events.
The rain
yeah.
event or the heavy rain?
Heavy.
The heavy that, okay.
Yeah.
So it's not a normal rainfall.
Yeah. Well, as you,
Excuse me. You'll have your opportunity. I don't mean, but instead, it's a small crowd and I generally run a pretty informal meeting, but at the same time, let's
so.
say your comments.
So I had no idea what to expect, other than Steve said I should attend and explain my reasons for, how we've got this far and represent what I see the needs for this drain district are. So I created my own PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah, I've got it pulled up here.
And Brian can bring it up. I'll try to be quick, but it would not be 3 minutes normally. So.
You have the floor.
Okay, I appreciate it. The question I wanted to ask, did the Glen Lake Association get this proposal and are they represented here by chance?
No,
Okay,
No to which.
I know
no, they
most
didn't.
of us,
We didn't send it
many
to
of
like
us are
an
members and,
association, like the Glen Lake
Yeah.
Association.
yeah. Okay.
Rob Carter saw it coming,
Yeah,
and we've talked a couple times, but he did call in here this last week or two, and we talked at length.
okay,
So I
well,
definitely want to have him involved in the design process. Have him, and Brian and myself, and probably Tim sitting there and at least on the phone and go through, as we go through the project and see if he's got some ideas. He's, as you well know, very expert, so.
oh yeah, and I want them involved, and I know they and Eagle and everyone will be involved, if it goes forward. I just thought they might be involved up front like this, but so we've already seen this. I included this just to kind of put some boundaries on this district in case these Leelanau residents weren't familiar with the area. We got the manor on one end and we got Shady Shores on the other end, kind of bounding this particular area. So I want to go through some of the factors that I see that contribute to this whole drain issue. And then I had a bunch of sample photos, which have already been shown. So we can go through those real quick. So the areas I wanted to touch on was Glen Lake itself, spring fed, particularly Little Glen, M22, the barrier, our property, where the water table is 18 inches, below the surface of the ground. The manor is a specific, ponding issue along M22 itself. And then just the ponding during the rain events that occurs, along M22, to various degrees. The significant events, it runs all the way from the manor down to Rob's 7211 property, going down. And anything less than that has lesser amounts of ponding, but still, nevertheless, ponding. I showed some samples, and then I touch on Shady Shores at the end. So we can go to the next slide. Glen Lake, particularly Little Glen, has no creeks. It's all spring fed. And these are very noticeable as you drive down M22 on these stretches with the warm spots in the early ice. You can see the springs locations. And, particularly this district is a very high water table. And a lot of springs. There's 3 artesian wells. One of them runs like a fire hose year round. I have one on my property. It's a trickle, but it runs 24/7 year round. Where there's 3 properties along the district that have sump pumps going year round. I've got 3 24/7 sump pumps are going activated. All along this stretch, you can't, it doesn't perk for a septic field in the front yards, at the road's edge, like a lot of properties will around the county, but just wanted to point that out. And I point out one little interesting fact that just outside the district to the west is an old farmhouse with a stone basement that's dry as a bone. And yet in my property, water table's at 18 inches. So if we go on to M22, the barrier itself, this stretch, separates the residents' homes from our lake property. We all own on both sides of the road, enjoy the little slice of heaven of Glen Lake. And there's 8 homes at the road's edge, and then 6 or more located up the hillside. We do have drains already existing along M22. The one in Rob Meyer's yard that's already been mentioned, down at the corner of M22 and County Road 677, at the Narrows, is another drain that empties into Glen Lake already. So there's no precedent being set by our drainage district in terms of draining into Glen Lake. And as Rob has mentioned, MDOT is aware of the issue and committed to a majority of the funding. So if we move on to our specific problem, just our property, just to give examples of the impact on us, we have had to encapsulate our crawl space in order to protect the integrity of our home. And still, it's like a waterbed with underneath that encapsulation. If I crawl around in the crawl space, I'm crawling around in a waterbed. We recently replaced our septic system, and in the permit process, working with the health department, they came out and did their boring sample to, complete that permit. And that's where we saw standing water at 18 inches in our front yard. And specifically, our property is the smallest property along this district, and maybe on Glen Lake, I don't know. But at any rate, we only have minimal ponding in our yard. It flows from west to east in the significant events. It's ponding in my property is not an issue. It's just the water table and ponding on both sides. So, and specifically the manor, that's been a historic ponding issue. And yes, there was road damage that they finally came out and tried to address with the swale that they put in front of the manor. But they had to revise it because the first swale didn't work. They had to enlarge the swale because of the clay subsoil there. And it still ponds into M22, even with the swale, to try and address that issue at the manor. Further, the manor has recently been approved land use for a new bed and breakfast with 10 units upstairs to be completed within the next 2 to 3 years. So that property is going to get more parking lot, more drainage, an impermeable surface going to be draining into M22. So that's increasing the need to
Can I ask a question?
have some drainage. Yeah.
Sir, is it, sir? Questions to the chair, please.
Is that a photograph of the Glen Lake Manor?
I think that's in front of Glen Lake Manor.
Yes.
That's my question. Thank you.
That's the swale. That's the swale filled up with water.
I got it.
So it used to be out all the way out in M22, part of that swale. Now it's just partially out.
Thank you.
And then I think the rest of my photos are really the same already shown, and I've got a little guide on where in the district that photo is taken. And you can kind of clip through those a little quicker because we've already seen them. That's our front yard in a major rain event. So not bad. It's just right in the right of way, not a big deal. However, I'm pumping 3 sump pumps into the same spot. It has nowhere to go. My last bit of information was just a comment about the Shady Shores. They don't have ponding so much down in front of Shady Shores. They have a dry well drain at their driveway, but in a significant event, that spills into M22.
Yeah.
Well,
We have a
I've seen
different
it.
definition of M22.
Okay, well, I've seen it out on the edge of.
Okay, let's,
It's a dry well drain and their front yard doesn't pond, but it seems like it should have a connection to the drain district being so close if it was, so that's not for determination here. It's just my kind of suggestion.
Brian will make a note of that as well, Steve.
Yeah.
Too.
So that's pretty much what I have, a repeat of what Brian said. So,
Thank you.
okay.
Other members of the public, you had some questions, ma'am?
I did.
Well, you gotta go up there.
Brenda Cashier, Unit 14-7121 Glenmere. Mr. Geisler has said that we have flooding issues there. We have, MDOT's already looked at us. To get approved as a condo association, they had to look at us. They've approved us. So I don't know what he's talking about, to be honest.
We had to put in
adjacent to M22 curbs, and they made us put in a low spart in our driveway. So that water that comes off M22 comes into our retaining spot. We've had to pay for that.
We've already taken care of our flooding
Yes.
issues, if there were any. MDOT's looked at us, and I believe the road commission has, everybody has, to be a condo.
And your point is,
I don't agree with what he said.
thank you.
So you're on the east end of the,
Yes,
that was, I went over there and looked at this, tried to figure out what was going on.
yep.
I see that, and I thought, well, this is just a mini mud puddle.
So
No, that's MDOT.
we could not get the condo done. And they said we had to put the curbs in
Right.
and put that in. So
So that's an MDOT thing.
that,
Well, that's it, the road's higher, way higher than the
Yeah.
curb, so it just didn't make any sense in my mind.
that was not a decision on our family to do that.
Right.
So,
Do you have any other questions?
Pardon me?
Do we have any other questions?
What?
No,
okay.
other questions from us? Shady
No,
Shores.
thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone else besides Mr. Geisler, is that your name?
Yes.
Anyone else besides Mr. Geisler? Go ahead, sir.
I just want to clarify, I didn't say, and I didn't mean to imply that Shady Shores has flooding issues. I didn't mean to imply that. What I said is I have observed that mud hole when it's at capacity, that it fills up right up to M22. You know, because it's just a dry well that can't absorb any more. Water.
Excuse me,
And so,
if I understand the point you were making is that perhaps it should be included.
Right, that's, you know, it's not currently in the initial drawing, and Brian's clarified that could change. And that's all my comment was, that because of that, it might be a benefit to them. However, I understand the complication of involving a homeowners association and condo complex. So I'm not advocating, I just made the comment, and I don't believe it's a flooding problem. And I didn't mean to imply. And we have a big history with Shady Shores. I don't know if you remember that, but we stayed there many years and loved it, and that's how we came to know the area.
Again, thank you. Thank
We
you.
like the neighbors.
The engineering scope of this project may or may not change, and I think that's what you stated at the beginning of the meeting. Is that not true? Okay. Are there no other comments specific to this particular drain from the audience? Or questions? Sir? Sir, go ahead.
My name is David Hendricks. I live on Benzonia Trail.
Can you come up to the table? That's where the microphones are.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I'm the newly elected supervisor for Empire Township, and I was debriefing with Carl Noonan, who's the outgoing supervisor, when an aggrieved person, a constituent, came in complaining about this project. And so I'm here mostly to educate myself about the process, and so that I'd be in a position to better represent my constituents in the future. And if they had questions, I might be able to give them a lot more intelligent answers than I'd be able to do today. So I have some questions about the process here. And my understanding is that the initiation of this proceeding had to do with a petition by landowners who are suffering from this watershed problem. Is that right?
Correct.
Are there any other cases in which this could be brought to your attention? For example, MDOT or the police department noticing this, that the landowners didn't sign a petition that would cause you to initiate an action?
Townships, villages.
MDOT itself can do
County Road
That
Commission.
it. MDOT.
needs a
cannot.
vote of the legislature, which is impossible.
Yeah, but those three, if it's a significant problem, the County Road Commission can step up and do a petition. Townships can do it and villages can do it. We've had a petition, our next one tonight is from a township and South Bar Lake was from a village.
Mhm.
So the entities themselves can step up and do a petition and do the process. It's a heavier lift. Basically, those entities are saying, we got to fix a problem, even though people are going to get an extra tax. But so it's a heavy lift, but they can do it by law.
All right, so then these multiple entities can initiate a consideration of this problem by you folks, but what kind of a process do you go through to investigate that the petition has merit?
You're at it.
This is it right here.
The engineer did, you're at it.
All right, so that between the petition and this meeting, an engineer or other experts get involved to go out and talk to the homeowners or
No, this is the meeting that determines that. Validity
The evidences are presented to us.
here, not,
So.
They didn't see anything.
they haven't seen anything, they haven't.
Okay,
I drove down there on last Sunday just to try to figure out where this was and what goes on. I've done several of these with the board. And usually it's an outstanding, you can tell there's an issue going on here, so.
right. So basically then what happens is a petition is initiated, it brings your attention to this. And then you look into it further. I mean, you don't make a determination that this work is going to be done according to any kind of procedure until you have substantiating evidence that this is worthy of action.
I have to call a board of determination. That's
We have
my
to
job.
determine
Once I get a
whether this-
petition, I've got to have this meeting. That's my job. So we're having this meeting so they can decide whether it's a thumbs up, we need a project, or a thumbs down, there isn't a need.
And just to, as I explained, like, it was actually in the oath that Steve gave. They just need, for them to make a decision, they just need to be given, mess up the legal term, is like material and substantial evidence. Basically, that they're given some evidence that there's a problem, essentially. They
Okay.
don't have to be given evidence from every individual in here.
No, I mean, this looks serious. And so
Right.
I think you'd take
So-
it seriously, but is it ever the case
So it's a
that,
low bar. I mean, to speak frankly, in terms of petitions and the board finding them necessary. Is 115 I've done, I've had 3 turned out.
okay, well, that's my next question. How do you receive evidence that would substantiate the concerns that's raised here? And has there
They
been?
have, quite frankly, like, I don't want to speak for them, but they were just given a resident that, and, you know, I put all his flooding photos in my presentation, but evidence of there's a lot of standing water and ponding issues out there. And plus the testimony he gave about the springs, there are issues that he has at his property, the 3 sump pumps. That's all evidence that the board would hear that goes towards public health.
Well, I'm not speaking to contravene anything Mr. Geisler has said. I'm just asking about the procedure, and that is it has happened that once a petition has been received, there are cases in which a decision was made not to act on it, to engage in an expensive project. Is that right?
There's, to answer your question, there's 2 ways in which not to act after a petition. The board can find it that it's not necessary. They weren't given any evidence, you know.
At
The
this meeting.
example I
at
gave
such a
about the
meeting.
one that I had turned down that was kind of an obvious, I did one down in St. Joe County.
Okay,
That outlet in St. Joe River. It's a county drain, haven't been touched in 100 years. But the guy had bought a new pontoon boat and he wanted to widen the outlet of the drain so he could pull his pontoon boat into his property, into his boat slip. That got turned down. Because that really wasn't a drainage issue. He wanted it as a recreational thing.
well,
That's,
okay,
that's an example. The other way to do it is there is a way. But the drain commissioner would need to do it at the application process, which I didn't find that it's not, the drain commissioner determined that a project's not feasible. You have an issue, but it's 20 million bucks to fix on a 18 parcel district. Yeah. Drain commissioner is gonna say that's not feasible.
Mhm.
This isn't, you know, everything has to be done in the practicality of, you know, you can't put people out of their homes to pay for a project. It has to be reasonable, you know, the assessments and portions have to be equal. So that's the other way, but I didn't he has to hire me once he gets an application. I didn't see that it's not feasible. I think it's definitely feasible to do, especially because MDOT is really paying for this.
All right, well, I won't, I just have one more
Those are
question.
the only two ways, like, once he gets a petition
Okay,
to stop it, either the board decides or like he determines through, when he hires me, that I say, hey, this is impractical to even do something here.
okay, so I'd like to clarify your comments. You spoke in a very informed way about how you would proceed to deal with this problem. You have a long running, I don't know what terms you can use. Your map shows a green dotted line along M22. Is that right? That would be,
Yeah.
that's a proposed fenestrated, what do you call it, a French drain?
Right, subsurface underground drain that would take the subsurface water, but there's like not a ditch, but a swale above it. So the water would collect in the swale. We would backfill material if it is clay out there and we can't use what's, but we basically put sand underneath that and then wrap the pipe in stone. And that actually helps with the surface drainage, the subsurface drainage, but then in between each driveway is a little pop-up, a yard basin to take any surface water to that wouldn't infiltrate down into the ground. So we don't have standing water as well. So it's actually a twofold way to deal with the drainage.
What about,
Excuse
is there
me,
any proposed?
Excuse me. If you don't have any specific comments relative to this specific project, but you really want just broader knowledge about the process, I think you find Steve, Tim, and Brian very helpful in an explanation of what a French drain is or the possibilities of what could be done. What I'd like to do is maybe stay focused on this specific problem. As I say, Steve and Tim would love to sit down, talk about the broader issues of drainage in the county, what their function is, how to address them.
Okay, thank you.
And we can come meet, like Steve and I spent like 2 hours with Carl on drains a couple of years ago.
And good luck. You're talking to two former township you were supervisor, weren't you? No, county commission chair. Oh, he's way more impressive than I am.
Thank you for your patience.
Gary, I'm sorry.
I appreciate it.
I was on the township board for 33 years.
Yeah. You were never sitting in the chair. Anyway, good luck.
Yes, welcome aboard.
Sir?
I'll be very brief. I'm Rob Meyer. I live at 7211. It's the bright red house, and it's the one that has the pipe under the road. I don't own the property. My wife owns it. I'm there as a guest on good behavior, but I can speak for her. She's in Minnesota. We don't have a
Do you
problem.
have that in writing?
I can get it. We don't have a problem because whenever we have a really heavy rain, it's very wet as the water rushes to the inlet on our side of the road to go underneath and be discharged. But I know our neighbors do have a problem because the surface flow to that outlet on our side of the road only picks up, not very far to the west and not even less to the east. And so there is a problem that I know our neighbors have. And so we're supportive of addressing it and remedying it. And we are also very attentive to the quality of the lake. And we've had a woman who does native planting, Laurel Voran, take charge of our shoreline, which is 130 feet. We use only 25 feet of it, and we're trying to let the rest of it be very natural. And and since the outlet of the pipe on the lakeside produces a lot of water, there is a species of endangered
Monkey
flower, and she has been successful in establishing a pretty good crop, if you will, of monkey flower on our natural part of our water side. So we're supportive of the project. We're supportive of whatever the design is. Ultimately, we would hope, and this is getting away from what you're dealing with tonight, but ultimately we would hope that the design would not too negatively affect the quality of the shoreline on our side, just if that's where the water comes from. That's
If it's done right, it might even improve it. It might
Great.
It might slow the flood. and it may
Okay,
filter through some sand. So thank you.
thanks.
No other comments or questions from you, sir?
Hi, I'm Ed Love, 7235. I'm Rob's westerly neighbor, 2 residences over. The one shot you had of the front yard, besides the manor that was all flooded out, that's my front yard, and it's getting darn close to my septic field. Now, you guys are worried about not putting the wrong thing in the lake. I think this sounds like a real good idea here. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Speak now. Public comment is closed. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that propose locating, establishing, and constructing of the Little Glen Lake drain as petitioned on September 30th, 2024 is necessary and conducted and conducive to the public health, convenience, or welfare.
I'll support that.
Supported by Gary Frederiksen, motion by Bob Hawley. All in favor?
Aye.
That's it. That's it. And
You have to read this.
Champagne?
I'm a neighbor to this project. I live across the bridge from Ed and the rest of you guys, and I appreciate you coming here and making the comments. This has been a problem. I've been here 35 years, and that's been a problem for all 35 years.
Well, I've been around over 50 and it's been a problem.
One more comment.
Yeah, I do
from
need to
Ryan.
read this for the end, and I will say one thing for the I'm sorry, I forgot your name. David, yeah.
David.
I think she's Steve Waymore. I've only been involved since 2018 doing work in the county. Steve exhausts every opportunity available and looks at everything available before getting to this point. So, like I said, we spent a lot of time trying to twist MDOT's arm with people we work with in Lansing, getting the TSC here to try to help us out. There's been a little bit of work from the road commission in front of the manor and things like that. But when we get to this point, he's kind of exhausted any of the non-drain related ways to handle stuff. So just so you know, like he does a very good job of, this is kind of the last resort getting to this.
I'd like to talk to you both at the end of the meeting.
Okay, so anyone agreed by the decision of the board, whether the maintenance, or excuse me, the locate and establish construction conducive to public health, convenience, and welfare may appeal the decision within 10 days to Leelanau Circuit Court. A municipality may appeal the determination regarding the protection of public health. You actually have 20 days to appeal it if you wish to. If you do appeal, like I said, or want to appeal, come talk to us, because the court's review is limited to whether the board's action are authorized by law and the board's findings of fact are supported by material, substantial, and competent evidence as a whole, meaning were they given evidence that there was a problem or not. The court will not look and say, you know what, they made a bad decision, they shouldn't have determined it necessary. They will basically determine were they given evidence of the problem, in which they were. The court won't. I mean, you're welcome to appeal, but the court won't overturn it. They were given evidence. They basically say, were they given evidence appropriate to make the decision? I would, if they are. So that's it.
no other actions. For this board, I'd like to comment from the staff relative to this particular issue. This meeting is closed. Just a comment from the chair, that those of you that are concerned about the Little Glen watershed or lake water, my wife and I, we spend a lot of time over in that area, born and raised here, but so is Gary. I actually think this project will protect the water and enhance the water quality. Big ponding over the road, rain events have gotten worse. the potential for some catastrophic flood across the road is diminished by this project.
That's one of the reasons we propose, like, I think doing subsurface drainage. I've done that along lakes and like this. It's, you get about a 95% nitrogen, phosphorus, suspended solid reduction by doing subsurface drainage rather than just ditches and catch basins to take all the water. You get a huge reduction in that. So that was part of the reason that's proposed. Also, it just, like I said, I've never encountered people that like want a 2.5 foot deep ditch in front of their property. So.
Thank you all for coming. Make sure you've signed in if you haven't.
Yeah, I think this will make.
Oh, you want to be on for?
Does this help your?
Yes, because for it's the same thing. Originally we included it because I thought it made sense. Because the way the road is in front of your property, we had to do that curb, at least provide an outlet to it. But the name provided some other stuff, like that you have to do in regard to. So that's why I just took it to the edge of the property and we can gauge whether it's really necessary.
By the way, you have a very darling daughter. She's our dentist.
I love her just so much. Thank you very much. Congratulations. Thank you.
Well, right, you're a site guy. Easier than. Yeah, so that's why, he basically said this, and he just sent me in the last week, like some of the stuff from the drainage review. So that was why. Like I said, it's not, you're at this point, you don't necessarily know. To the extent of it. And we always err on notifying people. So that's really part of it. Right, but part of it is, our work is gonna be in the right way, especially in your property. That's what I'm saying, like, our work will be in the right way. So we're not gonna do it on any property.
I don't know how the demographics plays out.
It may make sense to provide an outlet and put that over the input of your property. After I see what stuff is on your property. Right, and that's why we have like individual protection on giving you each of the units. Yes.
Question. You could probably.
Yeah. I mean, in fairness, those protection ponds, when I saw, those were each of the units for the whole site. Right, for the unit, but not for the entire site. Here's the problem with drainage. I'm not, it's site condos. It is all in like your common area, which you don't get assessed and taxed on or any of that stuff. Trying to figure out the tax. That's the issue.
Yeah, but the talk about the common area never got noticed.
You sent it out, whether you got it or not, it got sent out. Because it's in the district on the top, there's a portion of it. It's not, we took the property line on, because it got too road, so it doesn't approach there, but we included it purposely to at least notice the concept.
Lots of We have another meeting in about 5 minutes, so let's give the board a chance to use the restroom.
Yes, I did.
Thanks, Bob.
And
See you, buddy. Appreciate it.
See you later.
There.
Call and have your next table.
I don't have an agenda. It's gonna just become a system. Except the other thing I've read about this study, the geography and population density. It doesn't seem.
Time is really the key, like everything really.
Right.
Response.
So the answer to the question, Barry, how are you? It only has a rational answer.
Why?
If you wanted to